Now, let us see from today, we are going to study, understanding what is solids, what is liquids, what is gases, more even clear. So now, in today's class, we'll see the first some kind of substance called as solids. So now, can anybody tell me what you know about the solids? First point, whenever I will say use a word called as solid, immediately you should remember a word called as understanding, which is related to the solid. Solid means they are very closely packed or loosely packed or more even loosely packed. If it comes to the solids, in solids always, if you remember, what will happen?
They are closely packed, sir.
Whenever you remember in solids, always the particles, you should use a word called as particles. So if you observe, the particles of a solid, they are very closely packed. That is what we already studied. Understand? So we should learn even more in detail now. So if you take any kind of solids, the particles are closely packed and means in the sense of what will happen? If particles are very close, means in the sense of the attraction, the force of attraction is more or less. The more or less. Force of attraction, you can speak girls also. So the force of attraction which is present between the particles, force of attraction, understand, present between the particles is more. So that is why there is a strong force of attraction between the particles of a solid, so which holds them together in a fixed position. So why the solids, the particles having fixed position means fixed position. Why? So why they are having a fixed position? Because they have understanding a strong force of attraction. They have a strong force of attraction between the particles. So that is the reason why they are in a fixed positions. Now, because of this strong force of attraction, they cannot move from one position to another position, like liquid and gases. Because of the strong forces of attraction, they cannot move. They cannot move from one position to another. From one position to another, but they can vibrate at the same position. Let us see, that is I will see. Understand? But if we'll start heating a solid, if I will start heated, its particle will start vibrate faster. Understand? Basically, they cannot move from, suppose here the particle is there, it cannot go from there, but wherever it is present, at that position itself, it will start doing the vibration like this vibration. Now, whenever you start heating from the down, whenever you start heated, then this all the particles will start vibrate much and much faster. So if they are vibrating much faster because of gaining the energy, so the spaces between the somebody is speaking. Darun, focus on this here always. Sisters, good morning. Tamil Selvan, Maman is also good morning. So if you'll observe here, so what will happen in the sense of here? So as we know that solids, they are very closely packed, so that they cannot displace their place from one place to another place. They cannot move, but they will vibrating there itself, like this to and fro motion they will do. If you start heating much, they will start vibrating more and more. Now, if you take the spaces between them, if you take the solids, what is the spaces? Is it more space or less space between the particles in solids? More space or less space? You speak here, you already studied, correct? So the spaces between the particles of solids is more or less? They are very closely packed, correct? If they are closely packed, the spaces between them is what? Nobody say.
Less, sir.
Less. So the spaces present between them, understanding, is very less. Understand? Very, very small. So that the particles of solids have minimum kinetic energy. Remember that, all of you. So why they have minimum kinetic energy? Because the spaces is very, very small. The spaces between the particles is very, very small, so that they have minimum kinetic energy. Minimum kinetic energy. All of you should remember this. Understanding? They may ask you the question, why the solid particles have minimum kinetic energy? Because the spaces between the particles is very, very small. So just they will start vibrating. There is no motion of the particles. So they will only vibrate. Particles will vibrate to and fro motion. To and fro. Understanding? To and fro motion in solids. Means in a sense of like swing, coming back, forward, going forward, coming back, like that. So now, due to this, the solids have the most orderly arrangement of particles. Understanding? They have a fixed shape because of they have a less spaces between them, and they are very closely packed. That is why we can say solids have a most orderly arrangement of particles. Means particles are arranged in particular order in the solids. So now we will explain the properties of solids, understanding how these properties of solids will be present, understanding what is the difference between the solids, how we can separate them from the liquids and gases, and all we'll study now. So if it comes to here, the properties of solids, understand, we have already studied so many things, but we will explain in detail now one by one. So if it comes to here, understanding. So as we know that solid is having a fixed shape or not? Solid is having a fixed shape or not? Yes or no? Yes or no, Ra? Are solids is having fixed shape or not? Nobody is communicating. Yeah. So vibrates and converts into liquid. Laksha, vibration, if you will heat more and more, boiling point, that I will teach you, no worry. So now you tell me they have a fixed shape or not, solids, I am asking. Are you communicate, Rari?
Yes, sir. They are coming, sir.
Then why you are not speaking? You can speak. They have a fixed shape. Why? Because the particles of a solid are very closely packed. Very closely packed. So means in the sense of what will happen? Closely packed, and their positions are fixed. Particles are not going anywhere from one place to another place. So the positions of the particles are fixed. Understanding? Because of closely packed, due to that, the strong forces of attraction between them, so that they cannot change their shape. So that is why always the solids is having a fixed shape. That is the first property which you should remember. So if you take again also one more property, solid, if you keep it here or here or here or here, everywhere, it is having a same volume. Understand? So it is having a fixed shape as well as it is having a fixed volume. Solid is having a fixed volume. Why? Because the spaces between the particles are fixed. They are closely packed because of they are having a fixed positions. Positions are fixed. Positions are fixed. Like now, fixed volume because the spaces between the particles is fixed. The spaces between, understand, its particles is fixed. So that only they are having a fixed volume as well as fixed shape. So that is why we cannot compress the solids. So a solid, understanding, a solid cannot be compressed. A solid cannot be compressed. Cannot be compressed because the particles are already very, very closely packed and they are hardly any spaces. There is no understanding, much enough spaces to compare them, compress them. So we cannot do any kind of compression this. So now, if you'll observe, this is all about compression, volume.
Sir, we have to write these points, sir.
Yeah, you should already have written, but more in detail we have to explain. Already you have written, correct? Understand?
Okay, sir.
So now you observe carefully. A solid has density. I have taught you while I am teaching the fundamentals. Density. What is the meaning of density? Density. Mass by volume. Have you remembered?
Mass by volume.
Yeah. So density means mass by volume. So as we know that, if you'll observe, solids, liquids, and gases. Who will occupy more volume? Who will occupy more volume, Ra? Who will occupy more volume? Solids, liquids, and gases. Both I kept in the normal room. So who will occupy more space?
Gases, sir.
Gases compared to solids, liquids is more. Compared to liquids, gases is more. So now, if volume is more, then density will decrease. Is it yes or no? Because density is inversely proportional to volume. Is it yes? Density is inversely proportional to volume. Yes or no? Yes, Ra? One will increases, another one will be decreases. So if we take here solids is having a more density. Understanding? I should not say because you are 9th class, you are not kids, but I should say what I will do. Understanding? So if we observe here, the solids, they have very, very high density. The solids have very, very high density. Understanding? Compared to the liquids and gases, high density. Why? Again reason. Because the particles are, again, what is the reason? Particles are, speak Laksha, Manya, Samaya, everybody. Particles are close together. That is the reason. Understanding? They are close together. That is the reason even the density is high. They are shaped close together. Fixed volume close together. They cannot be compressed close together. Density also close together. Every reason, the reason behind every property of solid, what is the first reason? They are very close together. Do you understand, Tamil Selvan? So, that is the reason if we fill this solid in any kind of suppose container also, it cannot fill its container completely because the particles are held tightly by a strong forces. What is the name of the forces? At least you can say. What is the name of the forces? Particles are tightly closed by. What is the name of the forces? What is the name of the forces?
Interparticle forces.
Now you will say after writing. But what is the use of teaching? I am not understanding. You people are not at all following up. So interparticle forces, also wish to called as intermolecular forces. What we should call? Intermolecular forces. If you communicate means, then I can understand, yes, my students are studying. If not, what I will do? I cannot understand anything. Mavanish and all very dumb like fellows. Are you the dumb fellows? You can speak, correct? So interparticle, your school class means you people won't get chance to speak. So many will be there. Here you alone. Why can't you speak? I am not understand. So if we take here, these intermolecular forces or interparticle forces, they are very strong, and the particles are very tightly packed so that they cannot leave their positions to fill the whole container, so that only they will occupy whatever their volume. Understand? So similarly, if we take solids, if we keep it on the surface, is it they will flow like liquids? Is it they will flow like liquids? If I keep it here, is it they will flow? Solids. I'm asking you. Solids
No, sir.
or not? Solids cannot flow. Why? Solids cannot flow. Why? Solids cannot flow. Why? Because the reason behind, again, very good. Because the particles are held very strongly and unable to leave their fixed positions because they are fixed very strongly. Very strongly by whom? Very strongly by whom, Ra? By whom?
Molecules.
Intermolecular forces or interparticle forces. That is why. Understanding? So they have always, they cannot flow like fluids. They will be always, it is not possible to compress. They have high densities. They have high intermolecular forces. Understanding? Strong intermolecular forces or interparticle forces. So that is why they have always fixed positions. Understanding? So now, as we have just learned, a solid is having a fixed shape. Now, suppose, let me take a rubber band. How many of you know rubber band? Do you know rubber band? Just now we have studied,
Sir.
correct? So now,
Yes, sir.
rubber band is a solid or not?
Yes, sir. Solid, sir. Solid, sir. Sir.
Wait. I need to bring rubber band. So now you say, see. So just now we have studied that rubber band is a solid. Is it yes or no? So we have studied that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, solid is having a fixed shape. Is it yes or no? Solid is having a fixed shape. Just now we have studied,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
But
Yes, sir.
how it is happening this? Now, it is, if I'll stretch it, its shape is changing. Yes or no? So now, is it means that it is a
Sir.
liquid? I'm
No,
keeping
sir.
here, it is not flowing. But actually it is a solid. Just now we have studied that solid is having a fixed shape. But if we observe here this rubber band changes its shape on stretching. Then why do we call it is a solid? Answer my question. Why do we call it as a solid? If I am stretching, its shape is changing. So still why we used to call it as a solid? Anybody? This is the logical based questions. This is what we want. Tell me, why we used to call this one as a solid? Even though it is not having a fixed shape. See, if I am touching, the shape is changing. Is it yes? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Now, when this shape is changing, suppose I have kept here this rubber band 10 days also. Is the shape is changing? 10 days also
No,
like?
sir.
No. But when this shape is changing, only when I am applying,
When
only
we
when I am
react
applying,
to that rubber band, sir.
yeah, when I am applying the forces, understanding, under the action of force, or when I will stretch it, then when I apply the force, its shape is changing. Again, I remove the force. What will happen? It will come to the original position or not? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So, like all other solids, the rubber band is stretched with a large force. It will also will start breaking. Is it yes or no? Suppose if I apply the large amount of force, you can see, very difficult, but I can break it easily. Understand? You can see, if you apply the large amount of force, what will happen now? It breaks like other substance. Is it yes or no? If you apply the large amount of force, the pencil will break, the pen will break, like that this rubber band also. If you apply a huge amount of forces, the shape is changed or not? It breaks down or not? It will be happens. Understand? So now here
Yes,
if you
sir.
observe, whenever we are applying force, then only the shape of this, whenever the body is under the action of force, then only the shape is changing. Like these bodies is called as elastic bodies. What we should call? What we should call?
Elastic bodies.
Elastic bodies. But doesn't mean that is they are not the solids? Yes, they are the solids. They are the solids and they have fixed shape. Only when the shape is changing, only when the shape is changing of this rubber band. When I am applying
When we react.
the forces. Understanding? When this body is in action of forces, then only the shape is changing. If I apply the huge amount of force, then it is breaks like every other solid. If not, it will be comes to the original position. Do you understand, Amma? So that is why
Understood,
we can
sir.
call them as still it is a solid. Now let us go for one more discussion. Now I think all of you are in home only. Is it? All of you are in home only. Yes, Laksha. Laksha, communicate.
Yes, sir.
Darul. Yes. Have you seen sugar and salt till now? Is there anybody, those who don't know sugar and salt?
No, sir.
Do you know sugar and salt? Is there anyone without
Yes,
knowing
sir.
the
Yes,
sugar and
sir.
salt? Now, what we used to call them as? Solids or liquids or gases? What we used to call them? If you consider the sugar, understanding the case of salt and sugar, you consider, you tell me. Suppose when the salt and sugar are put in jars of different shapes, they takes the shape of the jars. Is it yes or no? If you'll keep in a bottle-like structure,
Yes,
sugar
sir.
will comes to the bottle structure. If you'll keep in a container structure, it means in the sense of, is it indicating that they don't have a fixed shape? Is it indicating
No,
that they
sir.
don't have a fixed shape? Actually, what we have studied, solids means fixed shape. Is it yes or no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but if you take in the case of sugar, dal, or else any kind of wheat flour, or else any kind of salt, whatever the container, if I'll keep in a like a normal container, it will come to the shape of the normal container. If I'll keep in a round carry, the sugar will occupy the shape of the carry. Is it yes or no? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now, why it is happening? So then, is it the sugar is not a solid? Is it the sugar is the liquid? No, correct or no? Sugar is a solid, but why it is occupying the space? It is all exceptional cases. You all should know it. Understand? So now you can see. Suppose, yeah. How many of you know? How many of you will say the properties of solids? All the properties of solids. Can you able to say, please, once? Just recall. Can you able to say, anybody? What is the properties of solids?
Yes, sir.
Sollunga.
Sir, solids have a fixed shape and fixed volume.
Solids have fixed shape and volume. Others, there is nobody. Nobody is there.
Solids cannot be compressed.
Cannot be compressed.
Solids have high densities. They are
Solids have high
heavy.
density. Solids cannot flow. Yes. So these
Solids
are,
do not fill their containers
yes, they do
completely.
not fill all this having a fixed shape. Correct. But now you see exceptional cases. Exceptional in the sense of why it is the reason behind we should know. So if you take the sugar, salt, or any kind of powder like structures, they are always occupied. If you put in a jars of different shape, they will take the shape of the jars. Means that it is indicating that they do not have a fixed shape. But if salt and sugar, they do not appear to have a fixed shape, then why do we call them as solids? Why still we used to call them as solids? They are occupying the shapes of containers, different containers, but still we used to call it as sugar and salt, like etc. substances, we used to call them as solids. Why? Here also the same thing. Actually, if you observe the reason behind, understand, because the sugar and salt have very tiny crystals. Is it yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Very tiny crystals, and each crystal made up of millions of particles. Is it yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So if we take these tiny crystals, the salt and sugar are considered to be solids because the shape of individual crystal. I have kept one small crystal. Imagine, this is what my sugar crystal. Is it the shape is changing? I have kept in container. Is it the shape of the sugar is changing or salt is changing? Whatever the container I can keep, this shape of this crystal is not changing at all. Is it yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So even when we are putting in different jars or different shape of jars, the sugar crystal shape or else the salt crystal shape is not going to change. So that is why we used to consider them as what? That is why we used to consider them as what? Solids. Do you
Solids.
understand, Ra?
Yes, sir.
How many of you understand? Darun, Tamil Selvan, Maunesh. Okay? Now,
Understood,
we
sir.
come to the next one. The last point I have told you, solids is not possible to compress. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with
Yes,
that?
sir.
Do you agree with that? Solids is not possible to compress. Yes? So as we know that solids are not possible to compress, but we can do it. Suppose, for example, how many of you know sponge? How many of you know sponge? Communication is very
Sir, aluminum foil.
sponge, aluminum foil. Aluminum foil, we forgot it, Pradosh, because we can fold it. We are not compressing. We are folding it. Okay. So,
Yes,
okay, that
sir.
is also kind of compression only, but let it be. So you can see here, suppose you can take a stone. Is it possible to compress? We cannot. Suppose this is a dongle. This is also solid. It is not possible to compress. Understand? So like if you take anything, understand? Suppose. And it is not possible to compress. This marker, not. This board, not. This wall, not. But if you take, understanding, solids cannot be compressed much. But if you take a sponge, how many of you know sponge? Sponge.
Yes, sir.
Construction and all will use. Actually, cleaning for board also before used to use people. Yes. So if we take this sponge, sponge can be compressed very, very easily. Is it yes or no? We can compress it easily.
Yes, sir.
We can compress it easily. Even kid also can compress this. Yes. Means in the sense of.
Yes,
Then
sir.
why do we call as a solid? Why do we call sponge as a solid? Cotton. How many of you know cotton? Cotton easily we can trust. Yes or no? Why?
Yes, sir.
Why we do call them as a solid even though they are compressing? Because you can consider here, solid is, understand, sponge is considered to be a solid because its compressibility is due to the presence of a minute pores in, understanding, in it, which are filled with air. So if we take the sponge, middle it contains small tiny pores. Pores means holes. Have you noticed it?
Yes, sir.
So this holes is filled with what? This, if any empty space is present, who will occupy that space?
Air.
Air.
R, sir.
So this empty space is occupied with air, so that what will happen? That is why it is possible to compress it. But here also you can see, if I'll keep the sponge like that, is it automatically compressing? Is it automatically compressing? No. So in the presence of force, when you apply the force, then a sponge is considered to be a solid, but even though it will be compressed because a minute pores in which air are filled, they are filled with air. So when we press the sponge, when it is under the applying forces, understanding, so the air which is present between these holes will go outside. Is it yes or no? Suppose the air present in
Yes,
the
sir.
balloon, if you release it, it will come out like the same way. If you press it, then the air which is present inside this air holes, tiny pores we can call, don't call it as holes, we should call it as minute pores. What you should call? Minute pores. Understanding, Amma? Minute
Yes, sir.
pores. So this air will come out, so that what will happen? The holes will, understanding, the holes will close tightly so that it is appears to be compressing. Once again, if you release, if you not applying force, it will come to its original state or not? Yes or no? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Now, because of this only you can see, because of this force which is filled with air, when this air is expelled means removed, understand, from its holes, making it highly compressible. We can easily compress it, understand. If we'll release it, again it will come to the original state. So that is the reason, even though it is compressed, we can call them as what? We can call them as what? Solid only.
Solid, sir.
Understand? So this is all. Do you understand why? We have studied the general properties of solids, but
Yes, sir.
we have some exceptional cases. Suppose I will stress the rubber band. My mind should think, yes, sir said the shape is always fixed, but this rubber band is a solid only. Why the shape is changing? Because of it is elastic solids. Understand? So elastic solids, when you apply the force, when they are under the force, they will start expanding. Understanding? When you will remove that, if you're not applying the force, they will come to its original shape. So that is why that kind of bodies is called as elastic bodies. Only few solids will show this property, elasticity. That property is called as what?
Elasticity.
Elasticity. That's all. So now I'm giving you 2 minutes time. Whatever you want to make it down like rubber band, sugar and salt case, and as well as sponge case. Each one, rubber band, change in shape, understand, fixed shape. Next, sugar and salt, it is what is that? Shape of the container, volume, understanding, shape of the container. Next one, so this one, compressibility. So 3 you should note it down. Do it fast, all of you. How many of you understand about solids now? Can you able to explain very clearly with the solids? Yes or no? Suppose if someone of your friends, basically you can take Manya, Samaya, someone of your friends if you take, they may ask you, if you'll ask what is solids means, they will say solids having fixed shape, solids having fixed volume, solids cannot be compressed, solids having high density, next solids cannot flow, like that they will say. But if they will ask you to explain a little bit more, suppose why the rubber is called as solid even though its shape is changing when we are stretching. Why the sugar and solid we used to call as solid, sugar and salt we used to call as solid even though still they are occupying the shape of the container. Next, why we used to call as sponge is understanding a solid even though it is compressed very easily. Can you able to explain or not? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
That is what we want. Understand? So that is only will makes the difference between you and your friends always. That is you should learn the way of studying. That is why I am teaching you very slowly, very clearly. I hope you are all understanding very well. Correct, Darun? You are outside school. Do you understanding, Darun? At least say yes or no, Darun.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Darun said yes. Okay. So now, if it comes to here, so the next one which we are going to study now, solids over. Next, who is Ra? Next, who is?
Liquids, sir. Liquids.
Liquids. So about the liquids. So like solids, liquids also some extension is there. That extension you should study. That is what we are going to do now. So now, let us start with that. So if you'll observe here, liquids. Next, keep heading, liquids. So what is the liquid properties? Generally, first tell me, what is the liquid properties which we have studied? Already we have studied, correct? What is the liquid properties? Solunga. Liquids having Solunga, they are having fixed volume but no fixed shape. Is it yes or no? Nobody is saying.
Yes, sir.
What is? So liquids, what is the properties I am asking? You Solunga. Properties of liquids, what we have studied?
It has definite volume but indefinite shape.
Indefinite shape, very good. So if you observe the liquids compared to the solids, the particles are less closely packed. Understanding? They are not close like as in solid. Their particles are somewhat loosely packed. Understanding? Somewhat loosely packed in liquids. Somewhat loosely packed. Understanding? In liquids. So if you observe here, compared to the solids, they are somewhat loosely packed, so that the spaces between them increases or not. Force is decreased. Now the packing is less, so that the spaces between them is increases or not. So compared to the solids, the liquids having little bit more spaces, so that understanding spaces are more compared to the solid. So the intermolecular force is less or not.
Intermolecular force is high.
Intermolecular force is compared to the solids less or no? Less.
Yes, sir.
Less
Compared
only,
to
sir.
solids. Compared to solids because they don't have a fixed shape. Understanding? So they are not very strong enough to hold the particles in fixed positions. So due to this, comparatively less strong interparticular forces. So the positions of particles, is it constant or always they will move from one place to another place in liquid? Always particles will go down, up, left, right, any direction they can go in liquids. Understanding? Because the particles, they don't have a very strong enough force is hold the particles in fixed positions. So not like solids, they will vibrate only. They can move from one place to another place. Upper particles can go down, down particles can go up, like that. They can displace their positions. So that is why, understanding, particles have no fixed position. So that is why they don't have fixed shape also. Understand? So, but if you'll observe, the particles can move freely. So means in the sense of, they have more kinetic energy or less kinetic energy compared to solids. Compared to solids, they are having more kinetic energy because they can move.
More kinetic energy.
Yeah, they can freely move. So that is only, the particles of a liquid have more kinetic energy than the particles of what? Than the solid. Do you understand? Compared to the solids, they have more kinetic energy because less intermolecular forces. Understand? So they are orderly. Their order is, there is no particular arrangement of atoms. They can go disorderly arrangement of particles than solids. So that is why the particles in a liquid is also vibrate like solid, but also they can move. Upper particle can go down, down particles can go move up. Always the displacement of particles will be there. That is why if you start heating much, already they are very fastly moving. So those who are already running fast, if you again give energy, then what will happen? Again they will go more faster. Is it yes or no? So that is why,
Yes, sir.
if you start heating, if you start heated, then the particles will gain more and more kinetic energy compared to the solids. Understand? So now, with the help of this, we will explain, understanding, properties of liquids. So